Hello, my name is Amy McCants. I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! Thank you for joining me for Ready, Aim, Stamp. Today I am going to show you how I made this magnetic slider card. I was inspired by a video from Dawn's Stampin' Thoughts where she made a magnetic slider card, and this is my take on it, using the Magical Mermaid set and Make a Splash set. So let's get ready, aim, and stamp. The card base is a standard size card base. It's 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. Then we need a piece, and I used Pool Party. And then I have a piece of Pool Party that is cut at 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And then I used the embossing folder of High Seas 3D embossing folder to get the waves. I also have a piece of Pool Party cut at 3 1/4 by 5 inches, and it's going to be used for the back side of this little pull tab. And then also for the pull tab, I have Whisper White cut at 2 7/8 by 5 1/8. I have the piece for the inside for the sentiment, and it is also just the standard cut at 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And then I also have a piece of the Whisper White for the mermaid and the little extra fish to be cut out of. One thing I want you to see about this magnetic slider card is that it is definitely magnetic. And this just works really slick. I like it. No slits need to be cut. You just have your little thing, your little mechanism to slide her out. All right. So first I am going to stamp on my little inside flap. And I'm going to do it a little differently. On this one, I had cut out the little fish and the little crab before doing the inside, before I had the whole plan figured out. But on this one, I know that I want the little crab and the little fish, so I'm just going to stamp them directly on the piece of white cardstock. And for my crab, I am going to use, I have a hair on there, Cherry Cobbler. Makes a nice crab color, I thought. And I'm just going to place him down here in the corner. Sorry, gotta make sure you're in my view, or I'm in the view. Here we go. And then I need the other little fish. And I am going to use, I think it's pumpkin pie. Yes, pumpkin pie for my fish. And just kind of, I want him to be just kind of halfway in there. He doesn't want to be too close to the crab in case he gets caught. All right. So now on my little scrap of paper, I'm going to want to stamp a couple more little fish. And I saw a trick for red rubber where the demonstrator took the rubber that was left over after you punch your stamp out, and she used that to trace around and get for her fussy cutting, and that's a great idea, but I usually don't keep my red rubber, so I thought, oh, what am I going to do? And what about those stamps that are photopolymer and they don't have the red rubber for you to do that? Well, you can lay them out And you can take your pencil and you can just kind of trace around that and get a pretty good idea. And you smooth it up when you actually cut it of where you want your fish to be. Then you can pick it up with your block, and since it's clear, you can see whether or not you're getting it within those lines fairly centered. I wasn't looking directly down. I didn't want to get my head in the way. Try to do a better job on the next one. So then I have one other fish I want to do that to. I'm just gonna trace around it. This really helps when you're going to cut them out, because then you don't have to feel like you have to get into all those little nooks and crannies with your scissors to cut it out, which I usually feel like I need to, and then I don't want to cut anything because I'm afraid I'll make it too thin, or any number of excuses that I can come up with. Alright, so this one I'll try to get over more so it's centered better. There, it's not too bad. Alright, then I'm going to do pretty much the same thing with my mermaid. She is actually on the red rubber cling stamps. Let me get her out. And my magical mermaid. And I just kind of layer on there. And you don't have to put a whole lot of pressure to stick her down and hold her in place, but just trace around. Kind of like tracing those cookie cutter shapes. All right. And she is stamped with the Memento Tuxedo Black. Again, because my block is clear, I can kind of look down here, or you could use your Stamparatus and then you would know that she was going back in the same spot, but not everybody has the Stamparatus, so I wanted to show that this was totally doable even with blocks. So there we have her, and then we would just want to color her. Now, since I did these on white cardstock, I went ahead and I took my Pool Party Stampin' Blend and I colored around the edges. On these ones, I colored around the edges after I cut it out because it was my first one. And since then, I've learned that you should color them before cutting them out. So you just kind of cut in close and go out a little bit past your cut or your pencil line, which is going to be your cut line. And then it makes it so much easier, and you don't have to worry about whether you got the edges or not. You could use either tip. On this one, it's easy enough to use the brush tip and get that layer, that color layered on there. And then I'm going to do the same with the mermaid. And then for the mermaid, we'll have to cut out 2 pieces because there's a clear backside that covers up those magnets. And when a tip that I saw recently when fussy cutting out these little designs, I like to have a smaller piece. And some of you may remember these tips from previous, when you learned how to cut things out. But when you're cutting, move the cardstock and turn it, not your scissors, and you end up with a much smoother cut line. It's not so jagged and not as many of those little sharp points. And if you cut just inside your pencil line, then you don't have to worry about erasing anything. I'm all for that. I'm still have to remind myself to move my cardstock and not my scissors. Retrain myself to cut out. So there I have my little fish. And with the magic of doing a video, I have pre-colored a mermaid, and then I traced around this mermaid and cut out a piece of paper. And then I tried to make it just a little bit smaller, but I still went around the edges with the Pool Party Stampin' Blends just to make sure it's even less noticeable, because it's not 100% perfect because it's not an identical die cut. And here's my other fish. Okay, so then I was gonna do, now we have our little card that's our pull tab from the middle. And I just put some little seaweed down in there. So I'm gonna do that again. I have 2 of my seaweeds out. Here's the other one. And the little tall grass, I don't know if it's kelp or what, I used Granny Apple Green on. And I kind of made it look like it was taller or kind of growing. Just by layering it on that side. This side. Stamp that way, and it's okay to stamp off because that's why I have my paper under there, my grid paper. And then you can't really see it because her tail covers it, but I did do some of the other little seaweeds. And I will go ahead and do those too, just in case somebody takes their magnet off of their card. There we go. And then I have a sentiment on this one. You always make a splash, and it is one of the sentiments that came in the Make a Splash, and that's a hostess set with the Handmade for You catalog that's good January through June of 2020. So there's still a little bit of time that people could get that. And on this one, I'm going to use Just Keep Swimming, because I think this is a time when we all need that message to just keep doing our best. And I'm going to stamp that in Pool Party. I don't know. I keep forgetting if I'm in the camera light or not. Camera lineup. Oh, let's do it right side up. That'd be good. And I'm just going to kind of use this one as a guide for how far up I want it to be. There we go. All right. Now I have most of this pull tab. I am going to use one of the dies from Stitched So Sweetly. And I am going to just cut at the top of this. So I'm going to line this up so that it cuts down to here. And I'm going to use some of my painter's tape to do that. To hold it in place as it goes through my big shot. Otherwise it'll shift on me and then I'll be very upset. And I'm just going to put it over here, and then it's on my waist part of my cardstock anyway, even if it decides to pull up, because I have had some of my painter's tape kind of pull up on my paper. So I'm going to run that through the big shot. I had to restamp this because I got so excited to run it through the big shot that this is what I did. Silly me. Instead of making sure that my plate on the big shot goes this way and only to the point where I want to stop cutting. Otherwise, you're going to have to restamp it a couple of times. So now I'm going to take this piece and run it through the big shot correctly. So I have a piece that is cut correctly and will work for a pull tab. And so you can also see that on this one, I have a little notch cut out. You can use a circle punch and go halfway down. But since I didn't use a circle punch for my pull mechanism on this card, I thought it would be kind of fun to have a shape that more mimicked that ovalish shape. So I used the story label punch and just punched that part on there. And I'll do that in just a little bit. First, we're going to assemble this little sleeve for the slider part where our magnetic slider goes into. And it uses the foam adhesive strips. And then we also have to get our magnets attached to the Mermaid and to the back side of this, so that that it'll work properly. All right. So the magnets I got, I think they're larger than the ones that Dawn got. They're a little over 1/4 of an inch in diameter, and I just got them from Amazon. I'll try to share a link. They're, in some ways, it'd be nice if they were smaller, but they're not bad. They work pretty good. They're really thin, so you want to take 3 sets of 2 because you need 2 magnets to make it work stuck together. Whoops. So there's 2 of my sets. And here's my 3rd set. And right now, because they are stacked, they look pretty thick. But once they're separated, then they're not too bad. You can kind of see the bump of the magnets where I have them on the Mermaid if you're looking closely, but I don't think it detracts from the fun of the card. I'm going to use glue dots that I had from a paper pumpkin kit. One of the great things about those is all the fun glue dots. And I am just going to stick them on one side of each magnet set. I like to do it this way. Some people like to use their take a pick tool. Sometimes I'll use my little pick tool to get those little papers removed because they can be pretty stubborn. Okay, and then I am going to, you stay away from there, stick one up near the top of the mermaid, one near the middle. You could maybe get away with 2, but I just felt more secure having 3. And then one down here in her tail. So then you can see that there's the 2 sides. They keep everything clean and help the magnets slide properly. So this part of the magnet we're going to put onto this blue piece of the slider card. Did I do that too big? I did cut it too big. So I'm going to go cut about 1/4 of an inch off of this real quick, because I want it to line up with the top of that for the most part, just for my design. All right. So I know that I have the foam tape in here, and it's not quite flush with the bottom. There's a little ledge around it. So when I'm planning my scene, I had to decide how far down I wanted the little mermaid to go. And then I just put my tape on my magnets, my glue dots. And that one's going to be stubborn. I can't do it with my fingernails if I've just cut them, so it's a good thing these ones, my fingernails have grown them a little bit. All right, there we go. So then I'm just going to kind of position her over this, and her tail can hang down a little bit. It's not going to make her stay off of the card. And I'm just going to stick her down. And then I can peel her off, and there are those magnets. So then I'm going to use the Tombow glue. And I'm going to put some glue on the front of my little slider part. And then I'm going to sandwich this part with the magnets stuck in place. And just stick them down. And then, I mean, like I said, you can see the magnets, but that's okay. And then I'm going to do the same with the mermaid, just to cover up those magnets, and stick some glue on there to help seal it. You could use the snail, but I like the glue because it gives me the wiggle room, and I feel like it has a little bit of a stronger bond than the snail does. So, and this is where maybe the smaller size magnets, just that little bit of less diameter would probably help, but unless you're really looking for it, I don't think you can see the bump of the magnet. And then just kind of seal the edges. Mine aren't completely sealed, but it'll kind of help your sliding if they're have a very decent seal. And then I also thought, well, a mermaid is magical, so we need some Wink of Stella on her tail, her scales and her tail, just to add a little sparkle. And I did that with the other one too. You can kind of see it in the right light. I don't know if that's... I can't tell if you can see that very good. But on this one we have... There you go. Some sparkle on our tail. So now we have our slider and our magnet. Now we're going to create that pocket on this using our foam adhesive strips. So I'm going to want one to go across the bottom as a stopper. Make sure I have the way my root waves down here the way I want them. I'm just going in a little ways. You don't have, you could put it right up against, you don't have to. But I'm going to put her on there, and then I can just place my foam adhesive right around that. And that'll give me a pocket and make sure that the way that it slides is right where I want it to be and smoother and straighter. I'm going up against, or really close to up against, but not actually touching this piece of cardstock. I'm going to do it with this side. Just use that piece. I enjoy these foam adhesive strips. They just add a lot to my projects. So now you can kind of do a little test run from both directions. And voila, it works. Looks lovely. So now I'm going to take my card base. I'm going to burnish the fold using my bone folder. And I can stick my center panel in here. Oh, I rubbed it up against the mermaid stamp when she was dirty. And again, I'm just using the Tombow glue. Stick that down. And then I'm going to position this pocket. And the fun thing is you don't even have to worry about like temporarily adhering these like we have to on some of the other ones where we cut the slit, because the magnet holds it in place. And somewhat centered on here. And then when I glue my two little fish down, they are not going to interfere with my mermaid because they'll be flat enough. And I don't want to put glue all over that fish because part of his tail hangs off. And I just make sure it's not going over the edge of this card because I don't want it to interfere with getting a card on an envelope. And the same with this fish. We don't want it to go off the edge of his tail because his tail hangs over. At least in this card. Just keep swimming or you make a splash. I thought those were perfect for this card. So now you don't have to have, mine might be a little bit high for hitting in an envelope. It should still fit. I'll test it. But just to add that extra space for the grip, I'm going to take my storybook label punch and just make the slightest little divot in there. And there we go, a very fun, seaworthy card. And I just want to test to see if it's still going to fit in there. It's a little bit thick because of those foam strips and the magnets, and I don't know if it would cost extra to go through the post office, but it fits in there. I think it would be pushing it to go. It might be non-machinable. And I'm not sure what the magnets might possibly do. So if you make one of these cards, you might not want to send it through the mail. You might want to hand deliver. But they are lots of fun. I wanted to show you a second card that I made as a magnetic slider card. And I used the Butterfly Gala stamp set and the Forever Blossom set, as well as the Butterfly Duet Punch to punch out my butterflies. I just thought that would be kind of fun to have two independent magnetic pieces on there. And I don't think I stamped, nope, I didn't stamp anything in the middle. And with the punch, then I could just punch the two pieces and put them together. And for both butterflies, you can see the magnet in the middle there. And then I used the story label punch and punched a piece of the black cardstock, and I folded it in half. Whoops, not on there. And sandwiched it in between the two pieces of my slider mechanism as my little pull feature. And then before I close this, I wanted to show you the trick. When you have a phrase, maybe you don't want all of that phrase for your sentiment. Maybe you can't fit it all on one line, and so you need to do it on a couple of lines. Another trick that I saw and that I've used several times for getting that, and without having to actually physically cut your stamps in half. I know that some people have actually done that, but I'm very hesitant to do that. So, I can't remember if that's big enough for that one or not. So, we'll just use a different one. I'm going to use All of Me Loves All of You. And I just use my transparent Scotch tape, everyday household tape. And I'm going to just mask off the portion that I don't want. And then I'm going to ink up just like normal. And then I'm going to pull that tape away, and I have a clean surface that then I can stamp. So keep that in mind as another way of making your stamps sets stretch further and fit what you need. just a fun little trick that I was hoping that maybe I could pass on and it would help somebody else. Thank you again for watching me today on Ready Aim Stamps.